Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. Last week we were looking at symmetrical scales and chords, and it put me in mind of a class of scales and chords called hyperscales, hyperchords. These are, generally speaking, constructions which move us past the octave. They don't repeat at the octave the way a simple major scale, chromatic, or whole tone scale does, but rather create extra notes above the octave. That seems a little bit confusing. I think if we try a few examples, you'll see what I mean, and you may be surprised at the remarkable sounds we can get out of these. I'm sure you remember this, but every major scale is constructed of two tetrachords. We were just talking about this yesterday. Whole step, half step, and then a second tetrachord. Whole step, half step. Two tetrachords joined by a whole step give you a major scale. And you can see that at the bottom there's a C, and at the top there's a C. This is a standard octave division. And many symmetrical scales act to divide the octave in equal parts. For instance, the chromatic scale divides the octave in 12 equal parts. The whole tone scale in 6. Or the one that's right beside it. Well, both of those scales are symmetrical. That is to say, we don't really know what the tonal center is, and each interval is exactly predictable sort of by its previous interval. Okay, keeping that in mind, and that may be too much to keep in mind already, I want you to notice this. What if I create a scale that repeats like this? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, half step, whole step. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start on F because I want to start a little lower. Whole step, half step. So far, so good. I'm at C. Whole step, there's an F sharp, whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. There was a C sharp. Whole step, half step. As I progress up, using this really rather simple formula, it's the top of a major scale, right? I keep generating notes that are novel, notes that don't belong in the scale down lower, but appear up above. And if you're like me, you'll be somewhat, I don't know, I guess I would say my ear is deceived by this because it sounds like a major scale that continually never gets where it's going. Doesn't it sound like the E is the target, and yet we know that we began on an F? That's because we're basically grabbing the top of the major scale and pasting it on to the previous top of another major scale. You can think about what I just did there as rolling around the circle of fifths scale-wise. It's a hyperscale, and it gives us a really interesting sonority. Well, I'm interested in that. It's a little bit of like sort of the first example. It was the first one I was ever taught. But I'm interested in some other things as well. For instance, I was playing around with a scale, a beautiful sounding scale today that I would just describe as minor third, whole step, minor third, whole step, minor third, whole step, minor third, whole step. It's a hyperscale, and it's symmetrical in its own weird little way. Let's start on A. Minor third, whole step, 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 minor third, whole step. So pretty. So it starts off and it feels kind of pentatonic to E flat, doesn't it? Except that the A is the bottom note. And then suddenly things get weird. Oh, it's so pretty. And it's weirdly symmetrical. Minor third, whole step, minor third, whole step. Well, you actually don't really have to try too hard to think about hyperchords creating new notes above the octave as well. For instance, something as simple as a major triad. This is an A major triad. Major third, minor third. If I take that as a structure, as a rule, and go major third, minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third, I get this beautiful chord, which I'd have to analyze as A major 13 sharp 11. Gorgeous, right? That's the top, that's the bottom. If I was going to continue, I would have... Now, you may have heard that sound before. It's actually a fairly common sort of contemporary sonority. I'm going to do it starting lower so that it's a little bit easier to manage. Let's do it starting on D, a fifth down. Major third, minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. So basically this on top of this. E minor 7 on top of D. Let's put them together. It's a hyperchord. It's an extension which blows us past the ordinary conventions of the octave, the equal division of the octave, or the 7-tone division of the octave, into territories that create new notes above that place. Don't try to write a K-pop song with these scales and with these concepts. But this type of musical logic is perceptible even if it's dissonant. And the logic itself creates a kind of a reality to the piece, which can pull a sonority together and help us compose something which is at once surprising and a little bit weird and difficult sounding, and at the same time reasonable to some part of our ear. It's the kind of sound which over time can begin to sound perfectly reasonable to us. So look out, it's a slippery slope. Symmetrical, I should stop recording here. Symmetrical scales and chords have a very broad application, and talking about hyperscales and chords in the way that we just have today is not a criminal reduction, but it's at least just a very small window. It's kind of like a keyhole look at the concept. There's lots of resources if you're more interested in looking into it, and I would encourage you to as well. Again, a big part of sort of contemporary composing, harmonic language, counterpoint, things like that. I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, and if you ding the bell, you'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.